The name of the show is The Way to Go. My name is Alan Bendich. I'm going to be your host. And we're going to have the continuing saga of Mr. Elie Rubinstein, my guest tonight.
Thank you.
So, Elie.
Yes.
I really enjoyed our first episode, by the way. It was great. I learned so much more about you.
Thank you.
So we're in the United States, right? You're in Cincinnati?
Initially.
Right. And then you decided that you were going to go to graduate school.
Right.
So you went to Brandeis University, and I think that's where we left off, right? So
Right.
What did you study again at Brandeis?
Well, I studied the Management and Heller School and also Jewish Communal Service at Hornstein program.
And when did you graduate?
In 96.
96.
By that time, my parents and my brother's family came, and they settled in New York. So.
Where in New York?
Brooklyn.
Oh, in Brooklyn. Okay.
Obviously.
Right.
And when I started looking for a job, I wanted to work in New York. I wanted to be in Brooklyn, and that's where I concentrated my efforts on trying to find a job.
So when you were living in Cincinnati, did you travel to New York at all to check it out, or?
My aunt lived in New York, so maybe I visited like one time.
Right.
But I had a lot of friends who were in New York, so I kind of, even without visiting the place, I kind of knew what to expect.
Right.
So it wasn't a cultural shock.
Right. As I mentioned before, you're an extraordinary communicator and writer. How long did it take you to use that transferable knowledge of writing in Russian to writing in English? Did it take a long time for you to, or is it just something that if you're intelligent and you're a writer?
I think I would agree with the second one.
Right.
That it kind of comes naturally.
Right.
And
But how did you learn the grammar and all that stuff? I mean,
well, listen, you learn by going to school.
Right.
If you don't go to school, you learn it later.
That's amazing. So, okay, so in 96 you graduated, and what happened after that again?
Well, I found a job in Brooklyn, New York, in a communal center, in a Jewish communal center called Kingsby Y.
What type of job was it?
I was assistant executive director.
Really?
So it was a great opportunity for me to be number 2 in an agency, in a big agency. At that time, it was like $2.5 million budget.
Right.
And
how big was the community that you served?
I would say about 5,000 members.
Wow.
It was a pretty big community. And another thing was like we rented an apartment basically across the street from the place where I was working.
My God.
So I would say it was like if I would take a car, and I had a car at the time, it would take me 3 minutes to get to the place. Wow. If I walk, it would take me the same 3 minutes. I don't know any other places where you have the same 3 minutes to get to your workplace.
Yeah, I've only worked once in Westchester in my entire working career, and I worked once in the Bronx. But other than that, it was like always either in Manhattan, which takes an hour, or or Brooklyn.
Like in theory,
yes,
it sounds wonderful.
Right.
Like when you work basically out of your bedroom. Right. At the same time, there are some downsides too. Like for example, you want some transition time. 5 o'clock or wherever you leave your workplace, you want kind of half an hour of transition, reflection, thinking about how the day went. Right. When you leave it and then in 3 minutes you're in your bedroom, there is kind of something is missing in between.
You need downtime. You definitely do.
Right. And another thing is it's to some extent difficult to live in a community if you work in the same community.
Right.
Like imagine a situation. You go to a supermarket and you buy different things and you walk with a cart and members of the center walking to you and they know you obviously and they're like, what did he bought?
Especially that community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bunch of yentas.
Exactly. Why did he buy this? Why did that? And I remember like somebody coming, why did you buy it? This is on sale. Buy better this.
Right.
Like you feel
it's nice to be anonymous, right?
Exactly. I mean, listen, you want some free time to yourself. You don't want to be a public figure, so to speak.
Right. And it goes back to what you talked about, like you're able to, you can have a separate identity at home versus the work identity.
Exactly. Right. It's part of the same philosophy, so to speak. And you don't want it.
So at the time, did your wife have a job at this point? Or?
Well, my wife, my son was born in 1904. in Cincinnati.
As was
actually.
my son. Well, my son was born in Westchester, but right.
Right, in 94. So in 94, I went to Brandeis, and my wife stayed with my newly born son in Cincinnati for additional year.
Right. Oh.
And then she joined me in 95, and him joined me in 95. And,
Right.
we already were there.
So, but when did she start working?
I believe, so she was with my son.
Right.
Then when I found a job in New York and we all moved, she went to school, and she started working like in 97, 98.
When you were living in New York, you were close to your parents and all this.
Sure.
So I mean, in other words, she had an opportunity because there was always family around to take care of Sam. And
but you know what? I strongly believed that you use this extended network when you need it.
Exactly.
When child becomes sick or something like that.
Right.
Normally speaking, after my son got toilet trained, he already went to the nursery school.
Right.
The same with my daughter, who was born in 2001. The minute she got trained, she went
and same thing with my kids. They went to that, and it was great because they start getting,
absolutely.
Dealing with other kids.
Absolutely. And you know what? Also, they go to this environment, they get sick initially, but then the immune system becomes stronger, and that's all about it. You know.
It's also just the community aspect of it. You learn how to deal with kids and not how to deal with kids.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's important because we're all people and we represent different communities, but we're all, in a sense, and I would say it, we're all humanitarians. We're all trying to promote something good that we have.
But some people take it to another level, which we'll get to hopefully before the end of this episode. So, so you stayed at that job for how many years?
About 7 years.
Wow. And what was the why did you feel that it came to a point where you had to leave that job?
Like many people, sometimes you become bored and you want something else. You would like some exposure. And I heard about Workman's Circle, and I heard that the Workman's Circle had a wonderful CFO by name Alan Bendich. So I felt that it's a great opportunity to join something. And I'll tell you something that I don't know if you had the same feeling, since we were equal in terms of the ranking. And the first few months, when I would attend different staff meetings or I would attend board meetings, I saw such a big difference in terms of the level of thinking from people in the Workman's Circle rather than in Brooklyn.
Yes.
It was more educated, it was more kind of,
very committed people.
Not even committed, but it was logical. It was really, I would like come to the meetings and I would say, wow, how Robert Kestenbaum, who was our executive director, would phrase this problem. I mean, I would never even thought about it. So I would say maybe even at that time, when you mentioned about my writing style, it had some transformation into kind of using your Brooklyn background that I acquired in 7 years and adding this crisp background from the Manhattan-based, from the board members who came either from Westchester or from Manhattan. And there were such a great board members like Fanny Jacobson, who was amazing.
But also, it also gave you an outlet to communicate because you were a person you were in charge of the New York region as well, right? I mean, that was one part of it.
I wasn't in charge of the New York region. I was in charge of marketing and development. New York region had Marty, who was in charge.
I forgot about that.
Right.
Sorry, Marty.
But I was responsible for all the regions.
Right.
So I would travel to Los Angeles. I would travel to Detroit.
That's wonderful.
To different places where the Workman's Circle had presence. And it was
and I did a lot of traveling too. I used to travel to Hopewell Junction and back.
That's wonderful. We'll travel together, as you remember.
That was fun.
Oh,
yes, we had some fun.
We'll keep it for the third episode.
That's a third episode. I decided to leave before you left.
Yes.
I'd gotten a job at the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, I believe. But you stuck around for a while.
I would say probably extra year. I think you left like in 2005.
Right, that's correct. January 2005 is when I started at Krohn's and Klein.
Right.
So
And
the end of 2004.
right. And I left in March of 2006.
Okay.
And basically the reason for me leaving was you do look at the ladder, so to speak.
Right.
So I was number 2 at the community center.
Yes.
I was marketing and development director in a national organization at Workman's Circle.
Right.
The opportunity came along to be the executive director of the national organization, the Blue Card.
Right.
And I felt it's moving up, and the great things about being an executive director, you're responsible for both functions.
Right.
You're responsible for raising money, and
Right.
you're responsible for distributing the money. When you're a development director, you're only raising money.
Right.
How they get distributed,
That's someone else's job.
right.
So the Blue Card you mentioned. Now here comes I mean, you were doing humanitarian work at the Workman's Circle and the other Jewish organizations that you worked for. But I don't think there's a finer organization or mission, being a Jew, oops, as I hit my microphone, than the Blue Card. Could you describe their mission?
Sure. The mission is to provide financial help to the needy Holocaust survivors in the United States.
Yes.
And the history of the Blue Card is really amazing. It started in 1934 in Germany. And we all know from the history that Hitler came into power in 1933.
Right.
So in 1934, Jewish community in Germany already started feeling the aftermath and the effect of Nazism.
Right.
People were losing jobs, businesses got confiscated,
Right.
and it's amazing that the community decided it's really like a grassroots movement they created. So if I lost a job, for example, and you keep the job because, you know, it's your company, or people who lost the jobs were primarily like lawyers, doctors, teachers.
Mm-hmm.
But if you had your own business, for example,
Yes.
you still have a job.
Right.
And they would start this grassroots movement of asking people like you to contribute money to the community and pass the money to the people like me.
Right.
And I think that's amazing.
It's like a social welfare, but not, I mean, it's really...
Yeah, it's a community-based grassroots
Right.
movement to help less fortunate ones.
Which is wonderful.
It is wonderful. And why the Blue Card? Well, again, I think it's coming from a German background,
Right.
like record keeping. Well, they didn't have computers,
Right.
they didn't have laptops, and it's a German community. People like to be very precise.
Right.
So they issued like a cards, and in the cards, there were like 12 months, for example.
Right.
So let's say they come to you and they say, Alan, or Alfred, if we're talking about Germany,
Yes.
would you like to contribute money to help less fortunate one in our community?
Right.
So Alfred says, sure, this is my 5 pfennigs,
Right.
or Deutsche Marks, whatever they were using at this time.
Right.
Let's say, okay, they say, wonderful. They take your money and they'll give you a stamp that it says that you gave 5 Deutsche Marks.
Right.
And you put the stamp for the month of September.
Right.
And you have this card.
Right.
So let's say tomorrow somebody else comes and says, Alfred, help the community. You say, I already did.
Right.
You see, I have a stamp. Oh, maybe you want to give extra.
Right.
Who knows?
But
It depends
it's
on
an
you.
option, right?
It's an option.
Right.
But you already participated in the community efforts. So that's how it started.
Right.
And I also tell you that through all of these years, a lot of people who were contributing to the Blue Card, who came to the United States in those years, they brought these cards and stamps here. And just last year, the Blue Card organized transferring all of these materials to the Holocaust Museum in Washington. So that would be, I believe the exhibition is going to be open soon, but it's a history. It's something
It's
that,
definitely history.
yeah.
And so it was started in Germany.
Mhm.
How long did it last in Germany? I mean,
I would say it lasted probably until like 39.
right.
But then in 39, 38, 39, it was reestablished here
In the United States.
in the United States because a lot of German Jews who were
Lucky enough to leave.
lucky to live,
Right.
it started here in Washington Heights because this is where the Jewish community from Germany settled initially.
Right. So it's a German Jewish
Yeah.
organization.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a German Jewish organization.
Right.
And they were doing the same in Crown Heights.
Right.
Not Crown Heights, Washington Heights.
Right.
The same what they were doing in Germany,
Yes.
collecting money for people who just came.
To the United States.
Right.
Right.
Who just needed help.
Right.
And then after the war, after 1945, with an influx of people who survived Holocaust, who came to the United States through DP camp, through concentration camps, who survived, the organization started helping those people.
Right.
And still does.
And at the time, let's say, in 45, 46, when the Jews started coming, you know, were the lucky ones who survived. How much was how much money did the Blue Card have around that time?
Not a lot.
That's
not a lot.
Right.
But again, listen, the probably cost of living
Right.
was completely different. But we do have a few board members who were teenagers at that time, who remember walking the streets of Washington Heights and collecting money, and then bringing money to the central place, and then how to distribute this money to the people who came.
I remember as a child, I used to work in a Catskill. I was 17, 16 years old.
Still a child.
And I just remember some of the waiters having the numbers on their arms.
Sure.
And you know, it's a striking thing to see.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? It's not only the number on the arm.
Right.
I had an opportunity to talk to many Holocaust survivors, and many of them told me, I mean, it's not only the physical, it's also emotional. Right. And emotional, very often it relates to the fact that imagine like somebody who is in Auschwitz. Right. The whole family is in Auschwitz. Right. And some German officer decides who is going to the left and who is going to the right. I remember talking to the woman, unfortunately she passed away recently, and she was telling how bad she felt that her younger brother was sent to the gas chamber and she was sent to work. Right. And she couldn't do anything, obviously. And she lived the whole life with this guilt that she couldn't protect. So that was kind of one thing.
But they were helpless.
But the
thing is, they still blamed themselves.
Yeah, psychologically they still blame. And then, interestingly, and she brought something else to me, and I kind of, before she told me this, I never thought about it. She said, look, I survived unspeakable horrors in the camp. I don't even want to talk about it.
Right. I
had, God was good to me. He saved my life. I came to the United States. I had the opportunity to start life anew. Right. For whatever reason, I feel so depressed that now when I'm in my 80s, I rely on the help of the Blue Card. Right. To continue living the way that, you know, with dignity. Right. And I feel that I failed twice. First, when I didn't protect my brother, my younger brother, right. And second, that I'm, you know, kind of depending on the help from you. Right. You know, and if you think about it, like, it's really unbelievable what we're talking about. Like, I remember a few years ago, I was in a pharmacy, right. In my local pharmacy in Brooklyn, and I saw a gentleman, older gentleman with number on his arms, asking a pharmacist, because the doctor prescribed him some pill, and the pill cost enormous amount of money. Right. And he was asking the pharmacist, would it be possible if he will take half a pill? Yeah. Half a pill. Right. And thinking about United States as one of the best countries in the world, right. The way we allow this to happen to elderly, it's terrible. It's really something that we should be ashamed of. But I would say this, as much as that woman that you talked about felt like she had failed her, I mean, it's amazing what you and your organization has succeeded in. I mean, it must I don't feel that we succeeded. There are still many people that we couldn't help. But you can't help everybody. True. And the thing is, and you're helping people. I mean, you're helping people who have suffered the worst. And I mean, what a mission in life. What you mean? I know that you sound like her, that you're not doing enough. But no, absolutely. That's how I feel. Wow. That's how I feel. And I'll give you another example. I remember I started working at the Blue Card in 2006,
Right.
and we were providing Holocaust survivors with different needs, helping them.
Right.
I remember one day I got the phone call from a social worker in Detroit. There was a woman, a Holocaust survivor, who was overweight. She was obese.
Right.
And because of her weight and obesity, she almost every night she would fall from the bed.
Oh my God.
Okay?
Yes.
And she had no money to buy hospital bed. Okay? So in 48 hours, we were able to deliver her hospital bed.
Right.
Because in order not to fall, she would try not to sleep at night.
Right.
We delivered it. And I remember like the whole process took 48 hours. And I remember going home like at 9 o'clock in the evening after talking to her, finding out that the bed was delivered, it was set up. And I said, I was enormously tired, but I said to myself, I feel I accomplished something. At least I know that this woman tonight will be sleeping, and that something brought such a satisfaction to me that you cannot measure it in dollars and cents.
Well, and you're not the only one who knows the good deeds that you've done. I mean, I've been fortunate to have Michael Listner sit in the same chair you're sitting in, and he's the biggest fan of you.
Oh,
I mean,
thank you.
he was saying
No,
what a
Michael-
wonderful, wonderful person you are, and the
Thank
magic that you've done for the organization, and how you brought it to the next level, and how much he really, truly appreciates you. And
Oh,
he said
thank
that
you.
right on that chair.
Thank you. And look, Holocaust survivors are very special to me. My both parents survived Holocaust. They, thank God, they were not in concentration camp. They managed to be evacuated, but obviously if they stayed in Belarus, they would be killed. Many family members who stayed, my grandfather was killed in ghetto, etc., etc. So that population is very special to me.
Right.
And I can tell you that in general, when I am looking at the world now,
Yes.
and I see what's going on in different parts of the world, and how human life basically worth nothing. People don't even think about what these human beings can achieve and how we can live better life.
Right.
Instead of this, we are we're involved in some really nonsense, or involved in something that's detrimental to the human nature.
And it seems like, I mean, there's so many young people who are getting themselves involved in, I mean, they're like lost young people who are
Yes.
joining all these different factions of people who are like destroying the world.
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, it's almost like there's a lack of global hope in certain areas. You know?
Well, there is a lack of global hope, you're absolutely right. But also, I think another important thing is, like there are a lot of discussion in the world right now. Is the world is like governed by just United States,
Right.
or it's like more countries like Russia, China should be invited to the table and make this world a better place?
And that's the question, right?
That's the question. Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
and you know, we see what we're going
Can
through.
we be just one policeman in the whole world?
Right.
Or it should be spread to other big countries that can help us to have a better relationship?
And who's going to be the chief of police? That's the other
That's a
thing.
big question, yeah.
And that's a big question that we're dealing with
Absolutely,
right now. That's it.
absolutely. And you know what, I think it's very interesting that you and I are talking about it today, when in a few days another United Nations session starts in Manhattan, when with all of these dignitaries and all of the people from all over the world are going to come.
Wow. And guess what? I'm not aware of that. So that's
Well,
it.
it's in September. So I
Wow.
believe it's September 17th.
I mean, you met
What
Elie
is Wiesel.
Wiesel. I mean, you in your function as the executive director of the Blue Card, you've met many, many interesting people. Right?
Sure.
But what was it like meeting Mr. Wiesel?
Well, look, I would say you could see him as a, I would use the word humanitarian.
Right.
You would see him as somebody who went through so many things in life. The way he would look at you, you kind of felt that he sees everything in you.
Right.
Everything that you have good and everything that you have not so good.
Right.
And that was really, the lifetime opportunity to be in the same room with a giant like he was.
See, I know you more as a human being rather than a humanitarian. I mean, you're one of the funniest guys I know. I have so much fun with you, and when I communicate with
Who
you.
said that humanitarians can be funny people?
No, but it's to me, just learning more about this side of you, to me, is fascinating. And I've seen the people. I've been to your galas. I've seen I've seen what people think of you and what you've done for the organization. And especially the Blue Card, you work for other organizations too. But for the Blue Card, and to me, it's fascinating.
It is, and you know what? I kind of, it's like, to some extent, relates to the name of your show, The Way to Go.
Right.
The way to go could be translated in different things.
Right.
You can think the way to go, like moving from here to the future,
right.
And at the same time, I kind of look at it as reflection. Right. You can say also, well, that was the way to go or not the way to go.
Right.
And obviously, at one point in life, we're all kind of facing with this question. And I would say that have these examples of something that you really made a difference, not by yourself, by the team of people. I always, it's not like me who does it.
Right.
There is a team of people who work on this. And knowing that you made a difference in people's lives is something that brings a lot of good feeling to you.
And again, I've known people that worked with you at the Blue Card, and everyone that I've met loves you. Everyone. And they know that what you do it's unique, and it's got to be. It's got to be a good feeling. But again, you always think that you're not doing enough at the same time.
No, absolutely. And kind of moving from the Blue Card, in at the end of 2012, beginning of 2013, I moved from the Blue Card. I became an executive director of Hebrew Educational Society in Brooklyn.
Right.
It's again, organization is fascinating.
Right.
It started in 1899.
Really?
Yes.
I had no
in
idea.
Brownsville.
Wow.
And the first president, I have his portrait in my office, was Simon Rothschild, from Rothschild family. Yes.
What a family.
Yes, and you know what? I'll tell you how many organizations that can claim 3 centuries of service.
Absolutely.
Providing service to the different communities in Brooklyn.
That's it.
So that was something.
My father can't even do that. He's only been in 2 centuries. So
I know, but
But you never know.
There is a way to go.
That's it. It definitely is the way to go.
Right.
Well, this has been. I had such a great time with you. I'm so happy that you came on the show.
Well, and I'm also happy that we kind of reconnected in some other things.
But I know there's many more things to talk about, and we're going to have to do that in episode 3 because there's only one thing left to say.
Yes.
And that's a wrap. Good night, folks.
Good.